ministries and different practices, and doing it very poorly at times, and learning from those mistakes, and then coming back and getting better at it. So today's talk will be covering apologetics in today's culture. So we'll talk about the climate of today's culture and how we can serve Jesus and his kingdom in this environment. But we'll be doing that by covering these types of things. Teachers like acronyms, so the letter M is going to be carrying us through. So we'll talk about the multifaceted role of apologetics, the main objective of Engage 360 apologetics, and what we think should be the objective of what you do with your apologetics, the many-sided task of sharing the gospel, means of persuasion, the manner in which we proceed, and the method we implement. So I'll break that down and make it more sense. It'll go slow. So the first thing we'll cover is the climate that we are finding ourselves in. So can you imagine a time when you could almost get in a fight with someone or be attacked by someone just for having a different idea, just a different way of looking at things? You could wear a red hat and be attacked just because someone automatically links you to an idea that they haven't even asked you whether you've entertained that or not. They get something in their head about you and they're ready to attack. This seems to be the climate we're in right now. There's also the type of thing that was happening in the Acts of the Apostles. People, how many times did Paul share his idea and get stoned for that, sharing that idea? We have martyrs. Stephen was the first martyr who was killed because he was, as I understand it, was unpacked for me by my pastor these last 3 weeks. He was actually trying to give a message to the Pharisees in which he pointed out from their history, showing, you remember this time when this happened and then they didn't believe in Moses and they turned away from Moses, and this happened and they turned away from God, and this happened and they turned away from God? And he was giving a history lesson, but I also was trying to prep these Pharisees and Sadducees to say, you're doing the same thing. This is our failure to listen to the Holy Spirit. And they stoned him for that. But at the same time, you have a podcast like Joe Rogan, who, as far as I know, has had 2 different apologists on his radio program in the last couple of years. Stephen Meyer, who's from the Discovery Institute, talking about intelligent design, and most recently Wes Huff, a biblical scholar. And because of Joe Rogan's confidence in Billy Carson, who was supposed to be a manuscript expert of antiquity manuscripts, but had a conversation with Wes Huff, and Wes Huff just tore him apart. Not in a just in a way where it's like, where are you getting your expertise from? He wasn't trying to have a gotcha moment. He was actually trying to understand Billy Carson's way of dissecting these teachings, and clearly Billy Carson was out of his depth. And that impressed Joe Rogan so much that he had Wes Huff on his program, which now you had presentation to the gospel to millions of people in Joe Rogan's audience. And then from that, different conversations about maybe what Wes Huff overstated or understated or needed to correct himself on. He was on a 3-hour live podcast with no topic in mind. I think he did pretty good in representing Jesus Christ. And at the same time, in the book of Acts of the Apostles, Paul, sharing the resurrection message at the synagogue, was asked by the philosophers of the day to come to the Areopagus and share these ideas. We want to know talking about Jesus and his resurrection. We want to know more about this. So the climate of today is very similar to the climate of the past. You have people who are ready to stone you, hurt you, kill you for your ideas, but then you also have an environment of people who are open to hear more on the topic. So we find ourselves in the same type of situation. So the question is, so how do we proceed? And the first thing I would say is, let's talk about what apologetics is. All right, what is the main objective and how it relates to the multifaceted role of apologetics? And when you think of apologetics, you probably think of defending the faith, reasons why you believe what you believe, and that's true. That's what it does. But how you do it, there's 4 main goals of apologetics, to sort of break them down, to see how they are different and what you want to do when you are applying apologetics. So the first one would be just deconstruction of other worldviews. You will wrestle with other views and break down where they're incoherent with reality, where they contradict themselves, where they really are not explaining, they're not the inference to the best explanation of the reality we find ourselves in. Those are all different types of arguments to help people show who are holding other worldviews, my view has a problem. It doesn't explain the origin of morality, the origin of the universe, the origin of consciousness. There's holes in my worldview story. And that might help them start to move to consider another view. Another thing apologetics does is defend the faith, right? It's sometimes it's the what about questions that Christianity has to deal with. Capital punishment, or God's judging nations in the past, or believing that a person rose from the dead, or that the way people in Christianity treat the world, or people who disagree with them, they're mean and bigots. We have to defend our truth claims and our views. A lot of the times is to clarify them, to point out that I don't know where you're getting that from, but here's the real view on that. Here's the real view on that topic, and here's where we're coming from. Or to just straighten out what the perceptions are, all right, and defend the claims that, depending on how they're coming at it, like someone's trying to deconstruct Christianity, that's when we go into defense mode, and it doesn't always look like the next thing, which is proof or vindication that the truth claims are true. Okay, I've found in my past, when you want to get into a topic with someone who's an unbeliever, starting out with a positive case, starting from scratch, defending truth, and then God, and then the Bible, and then Jesus. Some people don't have the patience for that. They're not going to listen to you get all the way there. There's just their mind, their heart, their will is not there. And but that is the thing. That the proofs are more for this open type class where you could say, so how do we what is the evidence for God? What is the evidence that truth is real and knowable? What is the evidence for the authenticity and the veracity of the Bible? That's a place where the proofs come in, an open place, so you can know why you're grounded in your faith. And those are like the side rails. And I often say, we do this because for sometimes there's a time when the music isn't playing, you don't feel God, you don't feel the Spirit, you feel by yourself, you feel like it's not going well. And you don't know if it's true because your emotions aren't feeling it. All right, that's when apologetics and good teaching kicks in. People are like, okay, it doesn't matter how I feel. The reality is, this is true. God is still real. He is my Savior. There's something going on. He's got my attention now. Let's walk it out in faith and find Him again. And apologetics keeps you safe in that aspect. The fourth thing that apologetics does is persuasion. We are actually trying to help someone move to make a decision to put faith in Jesus based on our conversation with them. That is what the other three exist for, is the persuasion part. And that's what Paul did going to the synagogues. He would argue all day in the synagogues with the Jews, trying to persuade them from the Old Testament that Jesus was the Christ and had to die and suffer and rise from the dead for our sins. And he was in the art of persuasion. And one quick note, the difference between persuasion and manipulation, I would say, would be manipulation is when you're trying to move someone to make a decision that benefits you. Persuasion is actually trying to do something to help people make a decision that benefits themselves. So we are in the business of persuading. So that is the multifaceted roles of apologetics, and while we're trying to, Engage 360 is trying to concentrate on the fourth one, persuasion. You need to know the other things, but unfortunately, some apologetics has just been about itself, more apologetics, for the sake of apologetics and knowing things, but knowing things, I found out, isn't enough. There's more steps in sharing the gospel, connecting with people, relating to where their problems are at, than just knowing the answers. I thought in the beginning, if I just knew the answers, if people just heard the truth, even if they heard it in a harsh way and a nasty way, that they would get it, they would not appreciate my method, but they would come. Well, No. Some people can just take the offense of you and not even listen to the gospel because they're just offended by you. And that seems to be today's culture. But again, how do we address today's culture? We mentioned there are some different responses today. So let's deal with the situation. First situation. What do you do when a person, you seem under attack by a person? They could hurt you. Harm seems to be near. All right? We have the permission to walk away from that person. This is what Jesus said in Matthew 7:6. He said, "Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn and attack you." There is a time when it is not safe to give a person what you know they ultimately need. At that time, that person doesn't need what you're having offered. They may need something else. They may need food. They may need safety. They may need to be, you might have to deal with an emotional hurt they're carrying from the church that might have hurt them in some way, probably not right. There are lots of Christians who hurt people. There are churches who hurt people. And we can say, you know what, they were wrong for that. Maybe that person needs to feel healing. They need to feel loved. They need to feel like someone understands them. They don't need the solution right now. They just need to know, you're not like the last Christian I talked to. You're not like the church who threw me out because I didn't obey all the rules. And the rules are important, but there's a time to address them. And for a person who was under my way of thinking, an apologist, I'm like, well, that doesn't matter. They just need to hear. They need to hear no matter what. But then I was reminded, as you study, you had Jesus and the rich young ruler. Now, Jesus told him the story, told him what his problem was, and the rich young ruler walked away sad. All right? Now, a lot of hyper-apologists or evangelists would be like, well, why didn't Jesus walk out there after him and keep talking to him and just keep spending time with him? Well, Jesus knew what that guy needed. He needed to process. He needed to go away, think about himself, think about what he had said, and come to terms with himself. There's a time for that. We don't have to chase. Every moment doesn't have to be about giving them the next thing. Right? Jesus knew that. And there are also times when people aren't willing to hear. Right? Jesus had an encounter with some Pharisees when he was teaching, and they were aggravated with him, and he says, the Pharisees come to Jesus and say, "By what authority are you doing these miracles? What authority do you have?" And Jesus said, "I will answer that question if you would answer a question for me. John's baptism, was it from man or was it from God?" And what did the Pharisees do? They talked about it among themselves. They said, "Well, we can't tell them what we really think, that it was from man, because, the people will get it. We can't tell them it's from God and lie, because then you're like, well, why didn't you listen to it? Okay, what are we going to do? Well, let's just lie anyway and say we don't know." Okay, that sounds like a good solution. We come back, say we don't know. All right? And Jesus said, "Well, neither will I tell you from what authority I have this." What is Jesus saying? Jesus saying, you are closed. You are hiding. You don't want to know the truth. You want to obfuscate. You want to be in control. You want to be in power. You don't deserve an answer. And sometimes people are in that position. They just don't deserve an answer for where they're at right now. The Lord's got to work with them more. The Holy Spirit's got to do something. And, it's just not that time right now. So there are times people aren't ready. But then there are other times when people aren't ready, and you also are going to get hurt. The martyrdom of Stephen is such an example. It was those people didn't want to hear, but it's something that had to be said. God had a plan and a purpose in it. He was the first martyr, and Paul was there too. So how does that all play out? Maybe Paul was given a model of what he was going to be called to do over and over and over again. So you have to be prayerful about that. If you with the person who's ready to hear, or with the person who's not ready to hear, you really do have to have that discussion with God. Lord, is this the time that I put myself in harm's way, or is this the time that I protect myself? You told me to do both things. All right. So you have to sort that out with the Lord in time. All right. So now, the bigger part of this talk, what do we do with the people who are open? All right? Who are the people who are definitely spiritually on board with hearing about what you have to talk about? So, I call this the many-sided task. Because want to open this up for your comments. Like, what are the things that some of the things that we may be dealing with if we're going to share the gospel with people? It could be personally for you, or it could be with the other person. What are some of the things we'll deal with? Any? Nothing. It's easy.
Give a little more detail about what an example of what you're talking about. Like, for instance, one of the things you might be dealing with is this is a person of a different faith. Maybe they're a Muslim or a Mormon. Is that an example?
Or what am I doing? What am I supposed to be sharing? Are they going to be mad at me? Are they going to ask me questions I don't know the answer to? What's the point I'm trying to make? Do I need to start at Genesis? Do I need to start with proofs for God, proofs for truth? Do I have the right motives? Am I trying to get another person in heaven for my glory, more tab on my belt? Am I being loving towards this guy? What does loving look like? Do I just give them hard truths over and over and over again? What do I do if they become angry at me? What if it's a very close friend, and I love their friendship, I don't want to do anything that stops that friendship. If I bring this up, they might not talk to me anymore. Okay. What exactly do I say? When do I bring up proofs? When do I bring up defense? How do I guide the conversation and not seem preachy? Right? How can I connect to them? And again, we say, what do they believe in? Right? So here's a way to proceed. The main objective. The main objective, we think, is to get them to interact with Jesus, his claims, and the proof of his claims in the resurrection. The gospel creed, the first gospel creed that we recognize is 1 Corinthians 15. And it talks about Jesus' appearing, it talks about Jesus dying, being buried, rising, and appearing to many people. Those are four facts that a person has to interact with. Okay, now that's the content of the gospel. There's a larger context. We have a broken relationship with God. Jesus is the solution. We receive the gift through faith. And when we receive it, the relationship is restored. We get the gift of the Holy Spirit when we're in His church. So those are concepts we talk about, and that should be the goal of where you're going. Unfortunately, in apologetics, whatever my newest toy was, that's what I wanted to talk to a person about the evidence for whatever. Evidence for God, evidence for truth, for the Bible. Whatever my latest fancy tool was, that's what I wanted to talk about because I was familiar with it. But it may not be what the person's at. And also, there's got to be a point. Where are we going to land? And it has to be with their interaction with Jesus in the resurrection. You can start anywhere. And why do I bring this up? I was just recently on college campus, and there were some people asking questions, and the question that arose quite often was, why does the church want to take away the only thing that makes me happy? This could be a gay individual or transgender. Like, that's what they want to take away. Why do they want to make me unhappy? And that's where the conversation starts. And I somehow have to maneuver it to get it back to Jesus, what he said, his claims, and his resurrection. You know, ultimately, if Jesus is who he said he was, he's the creator of the universe, and he knows what's best for you. Having an identical you was not his plan for your full flourishing, right? But that takes a long way to get from where they're at, angry at the church, to this resurrection method. But that's really the message. The resurrection is what they really have to wrestle with, Jesus and his claims, not a great defense of why the church teaches what it does. Okay, that might be on the way, but the point is over here, right? And if you can remember that, then you can get there sooner. And I'll teach you ways to sideswipe distractions. So the means of persuasion, I think this is very important because I think we all don't know really what changes a person's mind. Dallas Willard said this, and I think it's relevant. He said, our beliefs and feelings, Dallas Willard was a philosopher and a theologian, and very helpful in these matters. Our beliefs and feelings cannot be changed by choice. We cannot just choose to have different beliefs and feelings. But we do have some liberty to take in different ideas and information and to think about things in different ways. One of the worst mistakes that can be made in practical ministry is to think people can choose to believe and feel differently. Following that, we will mistakenly try to generate faith by going through the will, possibly trying to move the will by playing on emotion. Rather, the will must be moved by insight into truth and reality. So, this question is often overlooked of how people actually change their ideas. So, and that's what it is. If a person is over here in this position, but they're open to take in more ideas that you have with you and things that they should be considering about maybe how the worldview doesn't solve the problems it thinks it does, and that there is reliable evidence to show that the Bible is authentic and true. These different types of things, and they're like, I have to consider that. And as they weigh them with good critical thinking skills, they'll come to a conclusion that they can keep wrestling with you with. And it often takes like 20-something real deep conversations for a person to move from where they were to where they can be. So it's not an automatic thing. Even though the evangelists seem to bump into the person who's had the 20th conversation. That's a gift of God, who the evangelist seems to land on the person who, boom, 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 is ready to commit. It seems like the apologists land on the person who we don't get to plant seed, we're just tilling the soil, getting rid of all these barriers, and that's another thing that we talk about. So that's the means. The manner in which you proceed is how we do things rather than exactly what we do. And this is what I mean by the manner. And the manner we start with first is the biggest objection to Christianity. What would you think the biggest objection to Christianity is? Anybody? I think it'd be maybe a debatable thing, but the biggest objection to Christianity is Christians themselves. The hypocrisy, the inconsistency, the unloving, or so perceived unloving actions. What is the church doing? What does my mom and dad do? That's the biggest objection. It's not lived out and walked out properly. So the first manner in which we deal with it is, Paul tells us this. So watch your life and your doctrine closely. By doing so, will save not only yourself, but others as well. So we have to walk in what we believe in. If my gospel isn't changing me, then I really don't have a gospel to share with people. And one of the famous verses, Charles Willard points this out too, is always be ready to give a defense, an answer to those who ask about your faith. Right? Always do it with gentleness and respect. And Dallas Willard would say, is anybody asking you about the hope that you have within you because of your lifestyle and how you're living? It's like, if nobody's asking you, maybe you should really focus on your walk then. So then people will ask you about the hope that resides in you. Alright? So that's a big thing. And then he also said, we want to become all things to all people so that some might be saved. To the Jew I became like a Jew. To the one who's under the law I became like one under the law, even though I myself am not under the law. To the Gentile I became like a Gentile. So these are the things, we have to meet people where they're at. And it doesn't mean we're approving of what they do. We're just meeting them where they're at. We're getting to know the person. So in order to meet a person where it's at, you actually have to genuinely care and know and interact with the person. So this is the manner, these are the ideas you're just carrying with you as you interact. You want to get to know the person in front of you. And if you heard the person is an atheist or a Muslim or what have you, figure out what type. Who is this person? What is their brand of atheism? Because it's different there's so many shades of everything. Instead of just putting them in a box, I got them figured out. Ask questions and get to know this person. This version of atheism, this person, their passions, their hurts. Show genuine interest and care for the people as you point them to Christ. All right, these are other things you're going to look for to do in the manner is look for opportunities to affirm their ideas and points. Try to be on the same side. It may be a place where you can find common ground, but that's where you move on from. And also, as much as you can, approach it like you're not in a debate with a person, their side versus my side. More like we're both on the same side of the table, trying to work an equation. Here's the solutions I have. What did you come up with? That's interesting. I've never saw it that way, but doesn't this have a problem over here? If we're to, you're trying to figure out what reality really is. That's what apologetics is. It's the arguments for epistemology, which is the study of knowledge, how you know things, right? And the curiousness you should have is, how did you come to know that? I want to know. that doesn't make sense to me. Does mine make sense to you? Let's just be on the same side of the table, do the walk. We are confident in our answers. And a lot of times, they're not. A lot of people are not articulate on why they believe what they believe. A lot of people will end up in a place and be there so long they forgot really why they were there. And this will come up in the question portion. But they couldn't tell you. And they've drawn up so much stuff along the way, jokes from late nights and all this stuff that they think are good zingers for Christians. But if you're studied, you can just blow it away, no problem. And they're like, well, that really wasn't my reason anyway. And you're like, well, then let's not talk about any stuff that really isn't a reason anymore. And I take it as like when a jet throws off flares, when a missile's coming in, it'll throw off flares, hot flares, to get the missile off them. And the missile will blow up the flares rather than the jet. That seems to be like a lot of the things that people bring up when you're talking about spiritual things. That they really don't want to interact, or again, don't understand how they've come to be where they're at. And that's another thing we do, is we discover their barriers. So apologetics definitely handles and deals with intellectual objections. We're very studied in that. But there are two different other types of objections that come up that are hidden. They'll be emotional or volitional. Emotional is their feelings are hurt by the church, by a Christian, by God in some instances. Why did God take my mother, take my daughter, take someone from me? There's a hurt going on, and we have to pay attention to the emotions in those situations. And even the questions can seem like philosophical questions. For instance, someone might ask the hard question, why does bad things happen to good people? Tell me about the problem of evil and suffering. But the person who acts it like that and ready to hear an answer versus the person who says, very somber, I just want to know why bad things happen to good people. That person's hurting. Something happened to them. There's something going on. They don't want the philosophical answer. They need a hug. They need to be listened to. They need to be cared for. They need to be cried with. And that's where we have to meet them at. And then there's the volitional. What is the volitional? Well, we're seeing that all over the place right now in politics. People who will not listen to reason, they've just chosen to hate. There's nothing you can do about it. I've chosen to reject this. I don't follow reason. I've made a choice. It might be hidden behind intellectual reasons, but they've made a choice. And that person's closed. And the first step when a person is closed is try to get them to be open again. Try to get them back in that position where they'll consider evidence. But if a person's closed, there's no use of trying to get anything useful across to them. You just have to try to get them to open position again. Another thing we do is guard your conversation against Christianese. So sometimes people, I think Leo was just telling me, people can't even go in the streets of Europe and just say, Jesus loves you, because it has no context. They don't even know what you're talking about. Who's this Jesus guy? There's not enough. And the same thing can come with sin and repentance. You have to talk about the story while not watering it down or making it untrue, but talk about it in ways they can understand. We have a broken relationship with God that needs to be healed. There's only one way that can happen. Stuff like that. Then, where did you hear that from? Where did you hear that from? Is there a website? Is it NPR? Is it a YouTube video? Is it something you've made up? Where are you carrying this from? Where's this coming from? All right, so you'll find out whether it is just something they're just throwing together, or I'm following this guy, this teacher, this book, this philosopher, this religion. Okay, now you have more information. The next question you could ask is, well, how do you know that's true? What introspection did you do? What investigation? What's the evidence for this claim, for this religion, for this philosopher, for anything? And you start to they've got to give the case for why they believe what they believe. There's no pressure on you yet. You haven't been asked to do anything. Now this is kind of where it starts to, because as soon as they've answered enough questions, they're like, hey, well, why am I answering all these questions? What about you? What do you believe? And why do you believe? Well, I'm glad you asked. Thank you very much. I'm ready to take that on. But, so these questions are designed to genuinely understand the reasoning which allows them to explain. This is a place where if something is said weird, they have a chance to self-correct. All right? The most thoughtful correction you can have is on yourself. When someone's like, okay, you've said this, and now you've said this, and since we're working on the same side of the table, I don't take it as a gotcha moment. I gotcha, I'm going to burn you, it's going to be on YouTube, and I'm going to put the sunglasses on, and that's not helpful to anyone. Right? It makes one person feel good, the person who made that video. Everybody else is like, oh, now I really hate Christians, because they're making us look stupid. But you can say, genuinely wanting to know, I don't know how this and this goes together. And then they've got to wrestle with it. Now, if they're aggressive, there's some questions to help you if they try to put you on the back foot. Here's one question: what does it matter? Why does what you're asking matter? Does it have anything to do with Jesus and the resurrection? I remember getting schooled. There was Paul's travels. One of the guys I was talking to were not consistent in the records. One seemed like he was gone for 2 years and one 3 years, and it didn't add up. He's like, there's a contradiction here, so therefore I can throw the whole thing out because there's one contradiction in the Bible I'm leaving out. And I'm like, so I looked for the solution. I found the solution. I'm asking my teacher. I'm like, he's like, is there a solution? I'm like, yes, but he won't accept it. He's like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, what do you think? I have to answer these questions. I'm an apologist. I have to answer all the questions. It doesn't matter. If there's a solution and it's Bible, it's not a true contradiction. True contradictions have no solution. If it's Bible, he just doesn't want to accept the solution. That's on him. That's his spiritual battle. That's where he's at. That's where he's living. You can't help him with that. I said, okay, so some things just where they're at. He's like, yeah, it doesn't. What's it have to do with Jesus and the resurrection? I'm like, nothing. He's like, then stop dealing with it. That's the important wrestling match you have to have. Right there, you have to bring to bear all the evidence that you have, because that's where they're going to believe or not believe. Next thing you could do is, how does your view handle this? All right? So the problem with evil and suffering that they try to put on Christianity, there's a good, loving God who allows evil and suffering. Okay, we do have an answer, but first, how does your worldview deal with that? How does your worldview deal with evil and suffering? How does atheism deal with evil and suffering? So if I'm to be honest about it, as I know the landscape of it, they don't have an answer. It's an illusion, or it's your preference, and it's not real. Okay? Or, yeah, mostly it's a preference. I don't like it. It's ugly. Okay, but is it a thing that needs to be dealt with? Well, in Christianity, it has to be dealt with. With me, I just live with it. Okay? So that's an inconsistency. On their view, they don't really, it's not bothering them that much, but it has to be solved on our view. That doesn't seem equitable. It doesn't seem fair. So there's a pushback there. How does your view deal with that? And there's lots of things you can do that on. How does your view deal with it? If there's a matter of concern, everybody's worldview has to deal with it, not just yours. Okay? Another question you can ask is, have you considered God cares about the issue more than you do? When people are upset about the judgment of God in the Old Testament, or people are upset about the evil that's happening now, I mean, mostly it's the evil that the Christians are doing and the Republicans are doing. Why doesn't somebody stop all this? We should put them all in jail. Okay, you're very upset about that issue if someone is actually in the wrong. What about a whole nation of people who are just killing babies in fires out of false worship? What about, you're not angry about that? You don't think God cares about that? You don't think God is trying to judge the world in that sense? And in line with this, sometimes we have to find things that serve these up better. I just watched a video that was talking about the judgment of God and how it relates to the gospel. Like, God is concerned about evil. He does want to judge it. But there's evil in you. There's evil in me. If he comes back and does it now, you're going to be part of the wrath. You're going to be part of the corrective punishment. But that's why Jesus came, so he can save you, take care of evil, without having to also rid the world of you yourself and me. And I think that is a better way to think about it, to process it, to remind someone that God is worried about evil. He just wants to save the people who are actually causing part of it. And here's a very clarifying question for people. relates back to what I said earlier. If I could offer you a solution to that, would that make you take Jesus and the gospel more seriously? You're going, no. Well, let's not talk about it then. It's not relevant. It's not helpful. I'm not here to spar with you. You might enjoy that. I'm trying to actually get something. Right? And that's helpful because some people, it's an honest question. It saves a lot of time. Where it's not really a thing. It makes people introspective and say, okay, what is really my thing? Let's really talk about it. Let's not talk about these side things that you picked up along the way. That's the method we would use. So, in this talk, we covered what today's culture is like, and that it is really much the same as it was always. There might have been a time, probably, yes, not so long ago, where the Bible-believing country, you could totally talk about Jesus, about people who were not well informed about Jesus enough to make a decision for him, and without being angry, without being hated. That's past. But apologetics has a role to play. It's multifaceted, and we can focus on the wrong things. But if we are focusing on persuasion and using the other tools to accentuate that, I think we'll do much better. That's the main objective in Case 360. It's a many-sided task in talking to people. Some things that I left out that I didn't cover is really what's going on in your psyche about your being anxious, being emotional, not wanting to mess up. Well, what does the circle of learning look like? You know, when we do a path, when we learn anything, we learn a little bit, we go do it, we say, okay, I need to straighten this up, we learn a little bit more, and we go it. That is actually a pattern of evangelism and using apologetics as well. We're not going to do it awesome so many first time, second time, third time, 20th time. But we get in there, we learn, we go back, we get some more coaching, we come back again because we care about these people. We're getting better at what we do. And I think it's helpful to understand what persuasion is. It really is bringing new ideas before people who are open to look at them honestly. We have honest answers for honest questions. For gotcha questions, for rhetoric, we don't have any answers for that because it's a gotcha game. We're not going to. If you get caught up in the gotcha game, it doesn't get anybody anywhere. Doesn't move them. Definitely doesn't move you. And the manner in which we proceed is in love, in care, in authentic relationship with these people. And the methods we would implement is the art of the question. How do you ask a question to help these persons self-correct in an honest, open conversation? And that's what we hope to do at Engage 360. That's what I hope to be teaching these children here at Pillars. And right now I'd like to take any questions on anything that I've covered. And nobody likes to ask the first question, so we'll just move right on to the second question.
You've given us a lot to think about.
I know.
Things in apologetics that we never would have thought about had you not brought them up. And this is good. One of the things that I'm thinking of here while you're talking is it's much more convenient to talk to our friends about what's important in life than it is a total stranger. It's a little strange to go up to a total stranger and say, Jesus loves you. But it's very common and very comfortable to talk to our friends. So the things that we do in life, the friendships we make are really important. And also the fact that everybody has questions, and we shouldn't be afraid of hearing the questions. And if we can aid someone in answering that question, that's great. But I can tell from what you told us, there's a lot to it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, the funny thing about the friendships is there's a thing we teach in, we touch on also personality in our, like there are truth sayers and then there are relationship people. And the truth sayers, we will break down every relationship just to get the point across. And the relationship people are, let's just smooth it over, let's not talk about that, and we coach people, okay, if you're a truth sayer, you really should always choose to be nice in every situation. Because you will choose the truth at some point. It will come out. Don't worry about it. And the relationship person, you need to say the hard truth more often than not, because you will fix the relationship. That will be your ultimate goal. But for you to say the hard thing, that's what you should do more often, because it probably needs to be said, or you'll never say it. So we coach each side to try to engage the other part of their second. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think it depends on the person, just like you said, if they feel more comfortable speaking to people they know, because some people are more concerned about losing those relationships or friendships, and it's easier for them to share the gospel with a total stranger, because they think, well, they don't like me, I'll never see them again, no big deal.
Right, yeah.
So it depends on the type of
It depends
person.
on the person, the situation.
But in terms of the question asking, we talk about that all the time in the class that I teach, and asking questions is phenomenal for a whole lot of reasons. And one of those reasons that you didn't mention, but I'm sure you know this, is that sometimes when you don't know the answer to something, or you feel stumped, just asking a good question of the other person, it buys you a little bit of time, it gives you a little more information from them. It also connects you with them because it shows you're interested in what they're thinking and you're not just talking at them the whole time. Asking questions is what Jesus did best. He so often responded to a question with another question to get them to think or to connect with them or whatever. So it's just a phenomenal way. Dale Carnegie even said, like you said this, show genuine interest in people. And that's the thing, is that we have to show that we really care about the person. And he also says give frequent praise. And you might think you have nothing to praise them about or affirm them about, but what I tell the students is sometimes the only thing you can affirm is, I appreciate how passionate you are on this subject, even if you disagree with them, or, I appreciate the fact that you're willing to talk to me about this and that we can, have this discussion, because, like you said, to try to show them that you're not an opponent, that you're on the same journey, connects you with people and makes them more willing to listen.
And it can be difficult in this climate, because as soon as someone identifies what you are, they think they've got it all figured out.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of off-putting things is to help people say, I'm not for this, I'm not for that. I'm like, well, neither was Jesus. And they'd be like, oh, what are you saying? What do you mean? What? You just throwing them off track. They were ready for a fight, and you're like, wait, Jesus agrees with me? Yeah, he does. Let me say two things to what you said about the questions. You're right. Yeah, there's so much to talk about with questions. There's a part of a phenomenal teacher on questions is Greg Coco, has the book Tactics. It basically helped me see the dance I was doing with people. When I was in the dance doing it, and then I come across it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting beat here, I'm getting beat here, I'm beaten here. And he has this method of the Columbo method to ask questions. It is the what, the why, and then what about these two things. But here's something about, as an apologist thinker, I don't know how many of you are true apologists, but when I heard ask questions, I didn't take it correctly. Here's what I did. I thought, oh, they want me to ask questions up there. I want to say that Jesus is the way. Let me ask you a question. Did you know Jesus is the way? Which is just another way of saying what you want to say, but you're doing it so it wasn't the heart of the point of the method. Yeah. So, okay, not that. But then, to bring out a point where Francis Schaeffer Institute had an awesome teaching on questions. He said, you know how many times that Jesus asked questions to get the other person to move, or to understand where they're at? The first question he asked, Adam, where are you? Now, God knows where he's at, but Adam has to go, I'm hiding right now. You gotta think about that now. I'm hiding from God. I was just walking with him yesterday, now I'm in a bush, covered with rags, because I'm hiding and I'm scared. I don't want to be in your presence. Cain, where's your brother? Am I my brother's keeper? To Jacob, what's your name? All these questions. And ultimately, the ultimate question Jesus will say is, who do you say that I am? Right? So questions is the way that God works with us to help us see where we're at. So we actually try to take on a divine matter. In 1 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians 10, it's one of them. Talks about 10 that we wield divine weapons to strip away the strongholds of the enemy. That's what we're doing. And we can do it with questions. Because unfortunately, the person on the other side of this equation is the father of lies. Any lie we hear that doesn't make sense and seems to be just this off thing where boys don't know if they're girls or boys or girls, that's a lie. That's Satan's dream, to make you question every part of truth. That's his game plan. You know, think about what the dangers are in our world. False gospels, false spirits, false prophets, false teachers, false messages, false brothers. Well, they're all having common, right? So having this skill of discerning truth, which is what apologetics really is trying to concentrate on, is this is the evidence for what is true, and we know about the world, and this is the evidence for the falsehoods. Now, it's so simple. Does somebody have a definition for what thinking is? Simple definition of what thinking is. It's tough, ain't it? Like, thinking. Go ahead, man. Yes.
I was just going to say pondering about something.
Yeah, pondering about something, and to finish that off, to figure out what's true and false in the world. Even though we use it to say, I'm thinking about what to have for dinner, improper use. I'm thinking about whether the Bible is true or not. We're thinking. And then someone said, what is philosophy? Philosophy is just thinking really, 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 really hard of whether it's true or false. So we should all be learning these skills of how to understand the hallmarks of truth versus the hallmarks of what's false. And the best we can do is to figure out what is true, and then we'll be able to figure out what is false from a distance more easily. Like people who know, it's an old expression that's been used many times, some of you will know it, it's dated. Do you know how they train people to identify counterfeit money?
Study real money.
Study real money a lot. So then counterfeit is like, oh, that's false. And I'll leave on this note about when we talk about truth and falsehood. Some things are, depending on how they set up, it seems like truth is a long, distant thing. It takes a while to figure out something's true versus if something's false. I'll use an analogy. So say a person, so this table is supposed to hold 100 pounds, okay? And we put 50 pounds on it and it breaks. The truth claim was this could hold 100 pounds. We automatically know it's false. But we put 50 pounds on it, it breaks. If I say this table holds 100 pounds, I put 50 pounds on it and it holds, what do we know?
It holds 50 pounds.
And it could still possibly hold 100 pounds. We put 60, we put 70, we put 99. Alright? That's the seemingly way truth works. It seems to just hold. It just keeps holding. Where if something's false, it breaks down immediately. If something is contradicts reality or is incoherent, there's no such thing as truth. That breaks down so fast. Don't believe anything that your teacher tells you. Coming from a teacher. Okay? Stuff that seems ridiculous breaks down really fast. It's incoherent and it doesn't work. But the truth seems to be a thing you have to test constantly over and over, and it just continues to hold. That's the way the nature of truth goes. So that's just a helpful thing when you're having a difficulty with a long conversation with people. Just remember, they're entering this conversation and they just put 2 pounds on this table. Now they put 6 pounds. You're like, why did this person just come to truth already? Well, truth takes a while to test. And at some point you're going to go, and the analogy is you never get to put 100 pounds on it. That's our analogy. You will never get to put 100 pounds to see if Jesus really is who he said he was. But we can get very, very close to that and go, you know what? I'm going with Jesus can hold me. Right. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah.